33-year-old Joseph Lancia was on parole when he showed up last week at the wake of mob underboss Eddie Lado. But as part of the conditions for his early release from prison, Lancia had promised not to have any contact with the Hells Angels or other felons. This is Target 12 undercover video of former Hells Angels president Joseph Lancia at the wake of New England crime family underboss Eddie Lado in Providence last week. Lancia is the biker gang's former leader after being paroled on condition of having no contact with the Hells Angels or serving as an officer of the club. Target 12 has confirmed that days after the wake, the Rhode Island State Police took Lancia into custody and sent him back to the state prison. The Rhode Island Parole Board confirms Lancia is accused of violating the terms of his release. An associate for a law firm that has represented Lancia in the past provided Target 12 with this email that they say shows Lancia asked his parole officer if he could attend Lado's wake, and it was approved. It will be up to the parole board to determine if any contact he had at the wake or elsewhere violated the terms of his parole.
Well, the courts, based on recommendations from prosecutors and the police, to keep these career-type criminals away from each other, to ensure that they don't collaborate. And typically when you're placed on parole or probation, you're promising the court or you're promising the parole board that you'll be good and you'll stay away from people like that.
Former Rhode Island State Police Colonel and 12 News law enforcement analyst Stephen O'Donnell says it is common practice for state police investigators to monitor high-profile wakes like the one Lancia attended.
Every person involved in organized criminal activity know the state police monitor multiple different public events.
Back in 2022, Lancia was sentenced to 5 years in prison after he admitted to shooting at a rival who was driving by the Messer Street Clubhouse in 2019 and later knocking out a bouncer at the Cadillac Lounge strip club. But Lancia successfully convinced the parole board he had reformed himself and he was released from the ACI in June. Lancia's attorney Lisa Hawley declined to comment. A parole violation hearing is scheduled for next month. Coming up, new at 6, we take an in-depth look at the long-standing relationship between the New England mob and the Hells Angels. With the Target 12 investigators Tim White, 12 News.
New details in a Target 12 investigators exclusive. As we first reported at 5, the former head of the Providence chapter of the Hells Angels is back behind bars after he attended the wake of a mafia underboss in Providence.
New at 6, an email obtained by Target 12 earlier today shows Lancia sought and received approval to attend from his parole officer. Target 12 investigator Tim White is here now with the second half of our exclusive report.
For close watchers of the Patriarca crime family and the Hells Angels in Rhode Island, Joseph Lancia's presence at the wake of mob underboss Eddie Lado is not a surprise, but it may come at a steep cost for the former biker gang president. This is Target 12 undercover video of former Hells Angels president Joseph Lancia at the wake of New England crime family underboss Eddie Lado in Providence last week. Lancia was out on parole after promising the state to have no contact with the Hells Angels or serve as an officer of the club. The Rhode Island Parole Board confirms Lancia is accused of violating the terms of his early release. But a representative of Lancia sent Target 12 this email that they say shows Lancia's request to attend Lado's wake was approved by his parole officer. It will be up to the parole board to decide if any contact he had at the services or elsewhere violated the terms of his parole.
Eddie Lado was always really the major conduit with all the Hells Angels for years, and Joe Lancia and any other Hells Angels are just showing deference and respect for the passing of Eddie Lado.
Former State Police Colonel and 12 News law enforcement analyst Stephen O'Donnell says the Hells Angels and the New England crime family have historically had an underworld relationship.
Well, it's a huge connection where sometimes you think outlaw bikers and La Cosa Nostra operate differently. They don't. It's in their interest to cooperate and collaborate.
Hells Angels members have provided security for mafia figures and have both been involved in area strip clubs. O'Donnell says Lancia's presence at the wake was likely both for loyalty to Lado and to send a broader message about that long-standing relationship.
The risk I'll take is more important for the collaboration or the message I just sent to that organized criminal group.
Back in 2022, Lancia was sentenced to 5 years in prison after he admitted to shooting at a rival who was driving by the Messer Street Clubhouse in 2019 and later knocking out a bouncer at the Cadillac Lounge strip club. But Lancia successfully convinced the parole board he had reformed himself, and he was released from the ACI in June. Lancia's attorney Lisa Hawley declined to comment. A parole violation hearing is scheduled for next month. Lancia could remain behind bars until next fall if the parole board finds him to be a violator. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, 12 News.